Another day, another week, another bad news cycle for Activision Blizzard. Once upon a time it felt like Blizzard was just on a roll and could never be spoken ill about because they just released hit after hit. They always took their time with their games and it just felt like the quality was the golden standard. And now it just feels like, man, every day there's something going on with Blizzard games, be it their games get to be the worst reviewed game on Steam, which happened to Overwatch 2, or one of the worst games that has been user-reviewed on Metacritic. Or we get to hear about the plummeting of players because people are just kind of losing interest in Blizzard titles as shenanigans ensue. And this is happening for both Overwatch 2 and Diablo 4. I was hoping that Diablo 4 would mark a shift for Blizzard where we could see something of a redemption arc, if you will, or at least the start of one. But just as it felt like maybe that could be the case, Season 1 has been mishandled, the community isn't happy, and we're just starting to see players leave in droves across numerous Blizzard titles. Back in April of 2023, we got a report that Activision Blizzard's player counts plummet as Warzone 2 and Overwatch 2 hype fizzles, referring to the fact that there was a financial report during this time where Activision reported that they lost 13 million players compared to their last quarter, and Blizzard lost roughly 18 million players, which is probably in part why Blizzard felt the necessity to release Overwatch 2 on Steam, which they usually never do. Activision Blizzard tend to keep their games within the Battle.net launcher because they can get 100% of the profits from that. The fact that they decided to release the game on Steam, I think, shows a level of, trying to rekindle the player base to some degree. But with that comes the humiliation of this game becoming literally the worst user-rated game ever on Steam with a 9% from 142,000 reviews. That's a very definitive, overwhelmingly negative. Now, if you thought things looked bad for Overwatch, well, in comes Diablo 4 to drop off at a rate that is faster than Overwatch 2 or World of Warcraft Dragonflight for that matter, based on metrics involving Twitch viewership, which does define just how engaged the community is. If there are a lot of content creators who are making stuff for your game, that means that people are really happy, are just having a lot of fun, and everyone wants to get in on it because it's like the place to be, because it's just such a good time. But Diablo 4, it being a live service rather than just your traditional campaign-driven experience with some multiplayer components, it is important for Diablo 4 to maintain that quote-unquote engagement, but it would seem as though it's starting to flounder on that front. This is an article from PC Games Zen published 9 days ago. It reads right here, Diablo 4's Twitch viewership stats have taken a running jump off of a cliff, peaking at 937,361 viewers, almost a million on the early access launch, then peaking again on launch day at less but still a significant 686,936 players. Since then, it has dropped off to a minute 13,601 viewers on Twitch as of August 7th. That is 1.45% of its peak viewership numbers just over 2 months ago from launch. People have already tuned out of Diablo 4 and are deciding that their time is better spent elsewhere, that they're just more fun experiences out there. Now, Overwatch 2 and World of Warcraft numbers aren't stellar per se, but at the very least, they're maintaining somewhere between 23,000 and 60,000 viewers on Twitch for Overwatch 2, and World of Warcraft is at between 30,000 and 60,000. Diablo 4, which is a more recent launch than these, is doing worse, and it's just a dip that is a bigger kind of downwards trend, a faster downwards trend than we've seen with Blizzard's other games. Such a plummeting of Twitch viewership, while not necessarily directly indicative of how many players are playing Diablo 4, it could certainly serve as a potential indicator that the player count will not be in the best place. Lo and behold, as reported by Dexerto on August 15th, 2023, Diablo 4's player count is in rapid decline less than a month into Season 1. The tepid launch of Season 1 and the negative response to it definitely had an impact on people's prospects and hopes for this game. It just made for a really bad first impression. You kind of want to kick things off really strongly with Season 1 and set the tone. And the tone that's been set so far is that people might be able to expect thin spread of season content, baffling balance changes, and boring loot systems, which are some of the major criticisms surrounding Season 1. All of that which I covered in a past video, especially the way they nerfed classes and certain stats so much that they just made the game less fun. They even nerfed things like how long it takes for you to teleport out of dungeons, increasing it from 3 to 5 seconds for no good reason other than to, seemingly to artificially extend the gameplay experience, which just makes for a grindier, more boring experience rather than something that feels well-paced. So just a lot of mistakes on that front. Ironically, this season that was much maligned was titled Season of the Malignant. And yeah, the kind of loss we're seeing when it comes to player count is nothing to scoff at, as Dexerto reports here, enthusiasm for Diablo 4 is trending downward according to multiple sources. Not only is viewership dwindling, but the game has also lost hundreds of thousands of players. This is information that comes courtesy of third-party websites that track player count data for games like Diablo 4, namely websites like activeplayer.io, and it is reported here that it shows Diablo 4 has lost close to 600,000 daily players in less than a month. Again, if this were a non-live service, then this could be chalked up as people just finishing the game and moving on. But Diablo 4 being a live service, the intent is to keep players drawn in and engaged. I'm beginning to loathe that word, but that's the word that's used, for as long as possible. And so what you want to see is either a trend where the player count kind of lowers and flattens out, or, even better, if it just keeps rising, that just means more and more players are being drawn in. But when we're seeing a plummet that's this significant, that's a loss of interest that does not bode well for a live service. Diving further into the statistics of Diablo 4's daily player count, it plummeted from over 1 million at the end of July to 400,000 over the last 30 days. The number of monthly players also dropped by 122,000 over the same period. Twitch viewership also plummeting significantly from 941,000 in June to just 34,400 in August so far. Now, these are far from lethal numbers. The game still sees hundreds of thousands of players every day, and I'm curious as to how well the monetization elements of this game is doing with its overpriced cosmetics and its battle pass, which has not been well received at all because of how stingy it is with premium currency give out, and the rewards are nothing particularly great, especially for the free track, and just the general idea of locking rewards behind a battle pass rather than doling those out as rewards for playing the game. It's just not a particularly welcomed model, especially this being a premium priced game. I don't exactly know what Activision Blizzard's internal expectations are for Diablo 4, but no doubt they would have loved to sustain those initial numbers better. And the way Season 1 has been received, combined with the negative sentiment surrounding just Activision Blizzard as a whole, and seeing Twitch viewership just drop off significantly faster than it did for Overwatch 2, and the player count kind of following along, it's not a great start. It's not ideal, though whether there's a comeback on the horizon and all these things, obviously, it's hard to tell at this point. It really depends on whether the team at Blizzard can just get things together and just do a better season with Season 2, make it content rich and make balance changes that make sense and that improve the game, and just strive to do right by the community. But I feel like hoping for that is a fool's errand at this point because of the sheer number of times that Blizzard seems to continue to disappoint with the way they handle monetization, the way they handle content releases, and just the follow-up to their live services in recent months and years. It's all just been not planned out in the best way, to put it mildly, especially with Overwatch 2, which marketed that PvE mode, hero missions, and that got scrapped altogether despite it being sort of the flagship, one of the flagship features of Overwatch 2. And, so it's just hard to trust that they will bring it back. I myself checked the website activeplayer.io to see if these numbers are accurate. And yeah, you can see right here that the peak was 1.125 million players. And now the player base has dipped to roughly 400,000 daily players. That's more than 600,000. It's like 725,000 daily players that the game has lost since launch. And look, obviously at launch, you're going to see the peak number of players and some kind of drop off is expected. But this is a lot. This is I think a lot more than what Blizzard would have liked, especially because Season 1 was supposed to revitalize the hype for Diablo 4 again, supposed to give it enough new content that the game feels fresh again, to bring all of those players back in, or as much of them as possible, and to see that, you know, a significant majority didn't decide to come back, you know, that's indication of something not great for a live service. It's not a great trend, though again, in the long term, how this game performs, you know, we still have to wait and see. Time will tell. And then beyond that, Blizzard found itself under fire by the community and roasted by the community because of this gameplay showcase that they released on their YouTube channel, where they had two designers and counter designers kind of go through and talk about just some of the processes involved in designing for this game. And it involved them helming controllers and playing the game, which would be great if it wasn't for the fact that the gameplay was just really like amateurish and terrible and just not the best showcase of Diablo 4, which is why the likes to dislikes ratio is so abysmal. Only 1.2 thousand likes versus a whopping 59,000, almost 60,000 dislikes, and things got so bad in the comments, and this was mocked so viciously that the comments were turned off, which wasn't the case when the video first launched. The comments were on for a couple days, and then they decided that the mockery happening was too much. And it's a damn shame to see that these developers were thrown under the bus because, you know, at the end of the day, it was Blizzard's responsibility, whoever manages quality for content release, to check the footage, make sure that it was good enough for release, and then put it out there. A lot of people can't believe that, you know, this was edited, then approved, and then released, given just how poorly representative of the game that video is. Players questioned the skill level of developers who are designing the game's encounters. Not every discipline within a game development environment needs to involve people who are absolute masters at the game, but if you're designing the encounters and playtesting them, you know, some kind of basic due diligence in playing the game, you know, like correctly is due. But the developers just couldn't even do basic stuff right during this particular gameplay footage. And again, this is not me trying to like diss these developers. They were put in that position, and you know, all Blizzard had to do was just like refilm the footage with people who were just, you know, just better at the game, maybe, who just understood how to present the designs that the developers put out there for encounters, present that better to the audience. But instead, they just decided to rush this to release, and it came to bite them in the butt. No doubt they're facing a lot of harassment when all of that could have been avoided by just quality assurance and just reshooting the video and just doing basic due diligence in showing the game and its features. This could have made for a nice little commentary on getting some behind the scenes of how this game is developed, but instead it turned into a vicious roast of Blizzard, and unfortunately these developers who, yeah, again, are probably getting some really awful messages because of a lack of due diligence on the part of whoever's supposed to handle this stuff. On Reddit, people are already talking about this. Somebody put out a link to the video, and the comments are pretty vicious. They seriously recorded and edited this and still thought it was a good idea to post this. Honestly, not everyone plays video games, and not everyone should be good at it. Even developers shouldn't be required to be good at games. But for the love of God, if you're doing a live stream, you definitely should put someone on who at least played Solitaire. This is so atrocious. This implicates the PR department who organized all this shit on top of the development team. Yeah, it's just not a good look. It gives off the same vibes that Season 1 did, which is that it felt like they didn't really care about taking their time and releasing something substantial. It just felt like they just rushed just poor decisions out there that came to bite them in the ass. Here's a comment that describes why this gameplay is so awful and it feels like it's being played by people who've like never played the game. This is painful to watch. Level 50, doing WT1 and almost running out of potions, not healing, dying. Why is she button mashing? Basic attack is a held button, and most everything else is a one-time skill followed by a long cooldown. It's just there was no efficient usage of the classes that they were playing as skills. It just gave off the impression that these are developers who have not played their own game because they weren't even just doing basic stuff to get through the encounters that they were showing off in the video, which is why we see comments like, I love that at 3 minutes in the video, they claim that they play test the game a lot, though the same person is playing a barbarian without shouts and only using fury generators. Then at 5 minutes in, the same person dies without ever even trying to use a healing potion or using any fury. She literally had full fury the entire video. Just a lot of basic mistakes that you wouldn't expect out of folks who are quote-unquote, play testing the game all the time. And I don't know if this is a case of maybe because they're talking and playing at the same time, they're having trouble concentrating on the game, which is something that can happen to some people until they get used to that dynamic. Again, I don't know why this gameplay turned out as bad as it did, but the basic fact of the matter is that the video shouldn't have come out the way it did, just as Season 1 of Diablo 4 shouldn't have come out the way it did. It just, this feels like a pattern. And meanwhile, because Season 1 content was so insubstantial, it very quickly dried up, and it's failing to hold players' interest for the long term. And now it's just going to be this dry period until Blizzard is ready to release Season 2, which hopefully will feel more substantial to mull players over for much longer up until the launch of Season 3 and do a better job at that than Season 1 is doing. So, yeah, that's kind of the state of Diablo 4 right now. Not particularly great. I don't want Blizzard to keep going down this path. I want them to start improving. I want to see that upwards trend. I want that roller coaster to stop nosediving and start going back up. But it feels like it keeps going down. But I suppose only time will tell how things will play out. We have seen live services make major comebacks in the past. It just sucks that we have to wait for a comeback at all instead of things all just kind of being smooth sailing and it just being an upwards trend from a good starting point. And I get that games are difficult to make, but, a lot of corporate shenanigans that demand that things come out a certain way, a certain date. Just the corporate environment that doesn't pave the road to just the most quality-driven and player-first focused development environment is an unfortunate affliction that is clearly affecting Blizzard's level of quality ever since Activision became more involved and Blizzard became less autonomous and more corporately driven. The results kind of speak for themselves. But that's one man's take. Let me know in the comments below what your thoughts and opinions are on the current state of Activision Blizzard specifically, Overwatch 2, Diablo 4, and all of their games, and what you hope to see from these companies and how you hope they'll improve in the future. And to be further updated on all things gaming news, reviews, and discussions, stay tuned right here on Young Yeah. I'll see you guys next time. Young out.